and they will never again allow themselves to be put in a position where their existence is threatened. Hi, this is Bishop Robert Stearns, and welcome to this week's Israel Frontlines update. Since 1992, I've been traveling to the land of Israel. It's been a privilege to bring tens of thousands of people there with me over the years, including 700 pastors from 14 nations. And so I want to invite you along on this journey of perspective as we've been there in the land, talking to people, everyday people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, religions, creeds, races, ethnicities, this mosaic, this complex thing that is Israel and the Middle East. So there's a lot to talk about this week. I invite you to tune in each week as we look at the news of the week through a biblical lens, a geopolitical lens, looking at what's happening in the Middle East, in Israel, and how it impacts our world. On March the 5th of this last week, President Trump issued a final warning to Hamas. We saw this even in the days after the election and before his inauguration, that this dragging out of the hostage crisis, which now has lasted, I think, close to 500 days, that he was simply not going to allow that anymore. And indeed, as he was inaugurated, we immediately saw a large uptick in the number of hostages being released. However, there still are dozens of hostages being held. Some of them we believe are alive. The last count I heard was that we believe about 24 of them are alive or were alive 2 weeks ago, because hostages who have just been released had visual sightings of them, had confirmation of life of them. And tragically, about 2 to 3 dozen are dead, but Israel wants those bodies back. It's very interesting that in the Middle East, that incredible dedication to the memory of loved ones, I mean, it very much extends to their bodies being returned and being able to be given a proper burial. This is something that is absolutely vital to bring whatever level of closure is possible to this horrible wound. And so on March 5th, President Trump issued a final warning to Hamas. And there is this sense that both the Netanyahu government and the Trump administration will no longer tolerate any kind of wavering denials of ceasefire back and forth with Hamas. And so we're waiting to see in these next several days what is going to happen. But at the same time that is happening in Israel, on American soil, folks, this is unbelievable. The kind of protests we're continuing to see on American university campuses. Open calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. How do you wrap your brain around this? These colleges, these universities, are supposedly centers of coexistence. Have you seen the coexist bumper sticker, right? It's got the signs of all the religions, coexist, tolerance, coexistence, human rights, social justice. So you don't hear these protests calling for a peaceful resolution. You don't hear them calling for coexistence. I was so impacted by my time at the National Civil Rights Museum and at the power of Dr. Martin Luther King and the principled leadership around him to bring change through nonviolent means, and to say that there was not a calling for a displacement of the other, but simply a calling for equal coexistence. And this is not what you are hearing in the Palestinian rhetoric. In the vast majority of the Hamas, Hezbollah, Fatah, Palestinian rhetoric, it's not what you're hearing. Now, the problem is that it is veiled in very subtle, nuanced language that to an untrained Western ear sounds very righteous until you understand what they're really saying. And so I just heard this week the report of one of those organizations, and they said, We long for the creation of a place in Israel where Jews and Arabs can live together in the land of Israel without the threat of ethnic superiority. Well, doesn't that just sound righteous and nice and wonderful, without the threat of ethnic superiority? But what is that really saying? What that is really saying is, because the Palestinians have proved this over and over again, we want to create a Palestinian state in Gaza and or parts of the Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank. We want to create a Palestinian state, plus we want now to return, right of return. The numbers have swelled now. When this occurred in 48, there were maybe 400,000 refugees, 500,000 refugees. Now it's millions. So they want the right of return for all those millions into the Jewish state of Israel. They're saying we don't want ethnic superiority, but what they're saying is we want to go back in so that Jews are the minority in the only Jewish state on planet Earth. There is one Jewish nation on planet Earth. By the way, Muslims have dozens and dozens of nations. Christian-based culture has dozens and dozens of nations. Hindus, the nation of India, the most populous nation on planet Earth. There are Buddhist nations. There is one tiny Jewish state where Jews who have been persecuted for centuries, indeed millennia, where they can feel safe. And so this is the verbal warfare. This is the verbal gymnastics, the semantic battle that they put out there. And so if you'll ask these peace activists at Barnard, oh, we don't want to destroy the state of Israel. We're not trying to destroy it. We just want that there should be no ethnic superiority. Well, that is the exact same thing, precisely the same reason that Donald Trump won the last election, was that we had unlimited migration through our southern border, tens of thousands of people pouring in, no regulation whatsoever, and our nation was being completely taken over. The Jewish people are not going to lose the Jewish character of the state of Israel. Now, minorities that live within that state are guaranteed and exercise full rights. But they are not going to create a Palestinian state around them when, by the way, there are already 24 Arab states that could tomorrow. 70% of Jordan is Palestinian. 70%. By the way, that's why Jordan won't take any more, because King Abdullah knows the Hashemite family rules Jordan, not the Palestinians. So you have a 30% ruling a 70%. So they won't take any more in because they know that their days would be numbered. Egypt doesn't want them because of their extremism, because Egypt, generally speaking, is one of the more moderate, more open Muslim states and does not want the increased burden of Palestinian radicals. And so why is this Israel's problem? So on these campuses of Barnard and Columbia and these other ones, it's all very righteous sounding. Doesn't evil always sound so righteous? Doesn't evil always sound so good? It really, really does. But what it is effectively calling for is the end of the only Jewish and democratic state that is on planet Earth today. And that's just not going to happen, folks. It just is not going to happen. So, President Trump threatened to cut federal funds for universities that continue to allow these illegal protests. In a social media post, President Trump stated all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows these illegal protests. And I won't read the whole quote, but the last two words, no masks. What a change. No masks. Because we have all of these brave freedom fighters who won't show their faces because they know they're not going to get hired for a job, they're not going to participate in the workforce, or maybe even continue their schooling with this kind of rhetoric going on. So folks, there's a lot happening. We're here right in the middle of it. I want to invite you every week, stop by for our Israel Frontline update. Hit the like, subscribe, share button. We're real people. I am not a political scientist. I am not a PhD in Middle Eastern history. I am a everyday person who has made, I don't even know how many trips to Israel and the Holy Land. And I've spoken to hundreds of Arabs, Muslims, Druze, Christian, Jews, everybody in the Middle East. And this is what I know. I know that the people living in the state of Israel, Jews and Arabs alike, are saying, can't we just have peace? And I know that tragically and horrifically, the vast majority of the Palestinian population has been brainwashed into thinking that they're going to overthrow the state of Israel. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, number one, because God says in his word it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, number two, because Israel has nuclear weapons and has endured the Holocaust and survived and thrived after the Holocaust. And they will never again allow themselves to be put in a position where their existence is threatened. So take a stand on the right side of history. Acknowledge the right of the Jewish state to exist in peace and prosperity, caring for its minorities in a democratic state, and find a solution for the Palestinian people first to be deprogrammed, which is going to take some time. Because we are now going on 70 years, even more when you go back before this, but decades and decades, 2, 3, 4 generations of brainwashing. And it's going to take a lot to undo that narrative, but we don't have a choice. It's necessary. So let's pray, let's work, let's get involved. I'll see you next week on the Israel Frontlines update. Shalom.